Gentleman yields back. We now recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you've released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. Chuck Schumer, March 4th, 2020. Highest-ranking Democrat in our government threatening a separate and equal branch of government. And if you doubt it's a threat, just remember where he made that statement, on the steps of the Supreme Court. And that threat began the 6-year assault on the court by the Democrats. Started with that threat. Then you had Senator Markey say the court's illegitimate. Well, how is that? Every justice I know in the court was actually confirmed by the United States Senate. That's how our Constitution works. How could it be illegitimate? But Senator Markey thought it was. Then we went to something that's never happened. The Democrats leaked the Dobbs opinion in 2022. You talk about trying to undermine a separate and equal branch of government, start leaking the opinions. That's what they did, which resulted in protests at justices' homes, which, by the way, the Justice Department at the time, under the Biden administration and Attorney General Garland, refused to enforce the law. 18 U.S.C. 1507 says you can't protest at a judge's home. And they refused to enforce the law, which, of course, led to some crazy guy going to Justice Kavanaugh's house with the design to kill Justice of the Supreme Court. Then, of course, we had all the hearings by the Democrats when they were in charge, attacking Justice Thomas, attacking Justice Alito. We had a hearing where a guy come in and lied about Justice Alito and said he leaked some document, which is it. Go back and watch the hearing. Definitely a lie by this guy. And why did they do it? Why did they do it? To concoct some basis for packing the court. And now they're saying it again. Time to pack the court. By the way, why do they want 4 justices, 4 new justices on the court? Why not 1? Why not 2? Why not 3? Why not 5? Why do they want 4? Because it's a 6-3 majority for conservatives. A 6-3 majority for people who actually interpret what the Constitution and the law says versus making it up as you go and making some new policy. They want 4 because they want a 7-6 majority. Plain and simple, raw political power. And they've been willing to do almost anything. Threaten the Supreme Court on the steps of the Supreme Court, leak opinions, bring witnesses in who lie about justices. That's why this hearing is important. And frankly, I hope we move the constitutional amendment on the floor. I hope there's a vote. And we'll see if these guys want to keep the court at 9, which it should be. It's been there for, what, 160 years or something? This whole Carville's talking about it. Former Vice President Harris is talking. They're all talking about it. The ranking member's talking about it. We got to pack the court. Why? Why? Because they don't like the decisions that this good court is giving this country. So thank the chairman for this hearing. Thank our witnesses for being here. I look forward to hearing your testimony, and I yield back.
Mr. Ross, you were speaking earlier, I believe, with the ranking member about the number of times that the number of Supreme Court justices has changed. When was the last time we changed the makeup of the Supreme Court? When was that? 1869. 1869. And I believe it was 1863 that the Emancipation Proclamation came out. So what I'm hearing is that Democrats want to go back to slavery-era politics with respect to the Supreme Court makeup. One of the arguments is, well, it's been done several times. But you just said it's been done no time since 1869. So 6 years after the Emancipation Proclamation is when Congress stopped playing games with the makeup of the Supreme Court, and now Democrats are defending this idea. Fortunately, some some are not living, but some were not quite as outrageous. In 2019, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg stated, "I think it was a bad idea when President Franklin Roosevelt tried and failed to pack the court. And if anything, it would make the court look partisan." In 2021, Justice Stephen Breyer remarked during a Harvard Law School speech that packing the court would be a structural alteration that would result in eroding trust in the judiciary. More recently, in September 2021, Justice Breyer again criticized packing the court. President Joe Biden expressed skepticism about court packing proposals during his Senate tenure in 1983. When speaking about FDR's proposal, he called it a bonehead idea. Former President Biden's own Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court expressed hesitation in 2021. The commissioners noted that court expansion is likely to undermine rather than enhance the Supreme Court's legitimacy and its role in the constitutional system. So I really appreciate my Republican colleagues for not pushing this slavery era idea that was last successful during the slavery days that I think we're trying to move past. And I yield the balance of my time to the ranking member, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you. Mr. Capozzi, if you don't like what the court's doing and you'd like it changed, how do you do it?
Well, you can ask the Supreme Court to reconsider its decisions. That's something the Supreme Court has done from time to time.
In a more broad way, how do you do it?
Well, you could take your case to the public. You can build up a record of opposition. You can advocate for change. You know, the conservative legal movement did that after Roe v. Wade, for example.
Yeah, you go make the argument and you win elections, right? You win the White House, you have a majority of the Senate. That's how the court's figured out, straight from the Constitution. But no, they don't want that. They don't want that because, oh, Republicans in the White House and he got to nominate people and you had Republicans in the Senate who controlled the Senate and they got to confirm them. That's how the process, well, we don't like that. So at one point they're saying, oh, we're not going to be, it's too political, but there's a political process to it as well. That's how it works. You got to go win elections. Do you believe leaking the Dobbs decision was designed to undermine and change the court's decision? Mr. Scherer.
It certainly appears to have been done with that intent. It was an attempt to try to get one or two of the justices who ended up in the majority on Dobbs to back away.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Thank goodness it didn't work.
Thank heavens.
I think it was an effort to intimidate the court. You think
Yes.
so, Mr. Ross, Professor Ross? Do you think that was the case?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and it was wrong. It was bad, right? We don't want that to happen again. Wish it never happened before. You agree, Mr. Capozzi?
I was a clerk when the leak happened, so I'm not going to discuss details of the leak, but I will say that it was a cowardly act, and I hope it never happens again.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Mr. Bowie?
I don't really have a strong opinion about the leak. I was not a clerk on the court at
It's
the
a good thing or bad thing?
I think that more publicity for what the court does would be good, but I think that sacrificing one's ethics is not good, no.
Whoa. But just yes or no. Is it a good thing to leak a decision before it's final, before the court's actually weighed in? Is that a good thing or bad thing?
I don't think it's good for anyone to sacrifice their ethical responsibilities.
Okay, by the way, why don't we know who leaked the Dobbs opinion? Mr. Capozzi, you were there. Why don't we know that?
I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that
Yeah,
question.
I'm not asking if you do know it. I'm just saying, why don't we know it? Seems like that's Mr. Scherer. Why don't we know that?
Well, I believe there was an investigation done by the.
No, I know
by
there
the
was an
Chief
investigation done by
Justice
the
that was
court.
inconclusive.
Yeah. Amazing. They couldn't figure out. Mr. Ross, any thoughts on that?
I really don't know.
Why don't we just add 4 justices now? If 13 circuits, we need to go to 9 to 13 as the ranking member. The full committee suggested at the start of the hearing. Why wouldn't we just add them now if we're going to add them? What do you think of that? We'll just maybe go down the line.
The first rule of justice is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I oppose doing that now, just as I would oppose doing it under a different president.
No, that's where I'm at. Totally agree. But it seems to me if we're going to do it, and 13 is some important number that we got to get to based on the number of circuits, then we should, if we're going to do 4, do it now. Mr. Bowie, would you support doing that, doing 4? You said if Congress thinks it's the right thing to do, we should go for it. So if it's the right thing to do, can we go for it now?
Well, I agree with the principle. It's in your prerogative. You have the prerogative to determine how the Supreme Court works. The court did not descend from on high in its current form in the palace across the street. It's your job to determine what kind of court.
And you would have no problem with us doing it now?
Look, I disagree with many of the policies that come out of Congress right now, but I really have faith in your ability to live up to your office. And I think that you have the authority to determine what kind of justice we want to see in this country.
That's great. I think I know what Professor Ross and Mr. Scherer's answer is as well, which is where I'm at. But
Yeah, I would oppose any expansion of the court.
yeah, I'm there too. Okay. Thanks, guys. I yield back to the chairman. Thank you for the hearing.